over the past several years, as Lucasfilm and Disney have continued to preach about representation, they've seen their fan base fleeing their product. Disney Star Wars is in an absolutely horrible place. But so many of the actors and producers and directors involved, all they can do is preach about how great it is, about how much diversity they've brought to Star Wars, because now people can see themselves being represented. John Boyega, not that long ago, even though he used to criticize Disney and Lucasfilm, now he was going after the fan base. John Boyega said racist Star Wars fans, couldn't accept him, even though they'd had plenty of black characters in the series before. It was wild, but it was all saying how grateful he was to finally represent black people in Star Wars so people can see themselves in Star Wars. Well, apparently Diego Luna feels the exact same way about Andor and his role as Cassian Andor in Disney Star Wars. Diego Luna on the importance of representation in Andor. And there was a lot of representation in Andor, and I've said it multiple times. I'll say it again. I think that we've seen some of the best stuff that Disney Star Wars has ever done in Andor, albeit it still does have a lot of problems. But one of the things that was glaringly obvious with Andor was the need to be like, hey, look, we've got a lot of representation in this. They talked about it with a lot of the cast and crew in Rogue One, even way back then, and they talked about it for Andor. Diego Luna saying the same thing. I grew up watching Star Wars, and no one looked like me. First of all, Diego Luna, if you didn't speak with a fucking accent, I don't think anyone would know that you were even Hispanic, just being honest with you. There was no way I could picture myself as part of that universe. And today it's different. If you're young and you have a Latino background, you see Star Wars and you go like, wow, that universe represents me too. And that's kind of cool. We're going to go through this entire article where he talks about Gold Derby, Andor's Diego Luna on changing landscape of Star Wars. Now that universe represents me too. It's weird that 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was just a lot of fucking people that love Star Wars all around the world. White people, black people, Latinos, Asians, everybody. They love Star Wars because they thought it was an awesome story. But now that we've gotten into this area of these people bragging about, we need something that represents this person and this group of people, the audience has gone the fuck away. In fact, despite the praise that Andor is receiving, it basically has the lowest ratings of any Disney Star Wars show. When you're talking a per episode basis or a per minute basis, it performs worse than The Acolyte. That's not just me bullshitting, that's reality. I mean, when we look right now at the Nielsen streaming ratings, we are now through the third week for Andor ratings. This tracks behind about a month, so we're getting Nielsen ratings as they come for Andor. 830 minutes watched, which on the face of it is like, wow, that's really impressive. Look how high it is up there. You also have to understand that they released 3-hour-long episodes to get to that 830 minutes watched. Not even talking about the potential backlog from people rewatching season 1 or rewatching other episodes, but let's just say all 830 minutes are coming just from people watching those 3 episodes. When you compare it to the numbers we saw for The Acolyte, when they released individual episodes, 370 minutes watched. What was the finale for The Acolyte? 335 minutes watched. Only releasing 1 episode that was significantly shorter runtime. So if you actually factor that in, fewer people are watching Andor, or were watching Andor, than watch The Acolyte. That's not bullshitting. That's just the reality. You only had 1 episode of The Acolyte come out. It was like 40 minutes long, and they're averaging around 340 million minutes watched. Whereas Andor, it's not 3 times that, despite their episode lengths being longer, and despite them releasing 3 episodes at once, 3 hours of content at once. But Diego Luna is very happy with the representation. Let's get into this entire representation thing here. Star Wars has been largely set in more of a mythic fairy tale realm, and you guys have moved it nicely into an allegorical way of telling the stories, using Star Wars that kind of vehicle. What did that mean to you to shift the paradigm on how to tell a Star Wars story and see it hit with the audience the way that it has? Well, it's just the audience keeps changing, keeps growing, and keeps growing in diversity. The audience for Star Wars is not growing. In fact, as you're pushing more representation, whether it's the queer representation, whether it's you being so happy to be a Latino or whatever it is, the audience is going away. They're fleeing. There are fewer people that are excited for Star Wars now than there may have ever been in the history of the franchise. The audience is not growing despite you trying to represent everyone or whatever the fuck this is. They're going away. They're moving away. You can't argue that. You can't escape that. But this is what you're trying to tell yourself. It's interesting that today there's room to do things in the Star Wars universe that 20 years ago were not even possible. I mean, having a character like Cassian, for myself as an actor to be involved in a Star Wars show, I grew up watching Star Wars and no one looked like me. Yet you were watching it and why is this always the case? I grew up a massive fan, but the big problem was nobody looked like me. Is that what you said when you saw Luke Skywalker blow up the fucking Death Star and you're sitting there clapping and cheering, yeah, fuck yeah, but nobody looks like me in this movie? Or did people love the story? It's just absolutely wild that the focus still is on someone's skin color or country of origin or who they like to fuck or whatever, instead of what it really comes down to is people being invested in stories, not because someone looks like me. That's ridiculous. But anyway, there was no way I could picture myself as part of that universe. And today it's different. If you're young and you have a Latino background, you see Star Wars, you go like, wow, that universe represents me too. And that's kind of cool. Maybe the focus should be, and I do think that Andor, I think that Andor is far better than The Acolyte and Ahsoka, just being honest. Still think it has its problems, still think it has room to criticize it 100% for some of the decisions that they've made. But the idea that still this is what we're focused on a show that on a per episode basis, on the amount of people that are actually watching, actually had fewer people watching than The Acolyte. You're focused on, wow, look, we're just so happy to do this. We're so happy to represent the shrinking Star Wars fandom. Star Wars is in a horrible place. It's never been worse. Yet you're saying that by inserting a bunch of diversity into something, whether forced or not, that's growing the audience. Sorry to tell you, it's not. It's had the opposite effect. Because as you've been focused on that, in general, the storytelling for Star Wars has gone completely down the toilet. And that's why fans are leaving. Not because they don't have anyone that represents them or they don't have someone that looks like them, but because by and large, the stories that are coming out of Lucasfilm, most people consider them to be garbage. And even something like Andor, which is getting praised by a lot of people, no one's watching it.